Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. First of all, thanks for being here. Thanks to DVDH for setting this up, and thanks to so many of you for coming along. I can imagine you've already had one or two of these webinars in the last few months, and I really appreciate you making time in your schedules for one more before many of us get off for the summer break. I was just reading something this morning before we got started, something totally unrelated in principle to district heating, about a debate on the origins of life on Earth and whether or not the emergence of life on Earth was just a matter of random chance that you wouldn't see repeated if we tried the experiment over again a million times, or if it was the inevitable result of a set of preconditions which will always lead to life in one form or another. And it got me thinking that I'm often asked a similar question about district heating, particularly by those of us who love it. Is there something inevitable about the emergence of district heating as the backbone of thermal energy supply in cities or not? And I probably don't have as much experience in the sector as many of you, but I've got enough to be able to answer that question already. And the simple answer is it isn't. There is nothing inevitable about the emergence of district heating as the default option for thermal energy supply in our cities. And there are a few reasons why. First of all, my experience at European level has taught me that it's difficult for them. It's difficult to regulate. Europe has a rich tradition of regulating the gas and electricity market. And when we ask them to actively promote something that falls outside the scope of their main competences, Europe finds it difficult. And I probably don't make it any easier, because I think there's a really basic contradiction in a lot of what I and we say as an industry. On one hand, I'm always talking about how district heating is a strategic European asset. I'm talking about how it is a European subject which Europe should deal with and promote. And as soon as they start trying to regulate anything, I say, don't touch that. Don't touch that. That's a local problem. Don't interfere. Needs to be done closer to the ground, and so on. And that makes it difficult for Brussels. There are similar problems at national level. There are problems for cities. And more seriously, I think for us, there are, on the surface anyway, more attractive offers. You will hear my counterparts from other industries announcing that we don't need to worry about heat supply anymore because we're going to make nearly zero energy buildings that won't require any heat. Or you'll hear that the future is all electric, usually from someone who lives in California, announcing that all we have to do is electrify everything everywhere. Or, and this is my more recent challenge, you'll hear that actually all we have to do in a place like Belgium or the UK is leave the gas grid as it is and wait for the gas to turn green. All of these stories are seductive. All of these stories are delightfully simple. They are pure and unsullied with any contact with the real world, because for the moment they're nothing but concepts. Whereas district heating is a little bit messier. We have the serious disadvantage of already existing in real life with all our qualities and imperfections. And politicians may enjoy hearing about a simple, seductive story, whereas I turn up and say we want to dig up the roads, we want to spend millions of euros on pipes, and we hope that there may be some customers at the end of them once we've got them all installed. So there are plenty of reasons for people to believe that the future is going to be something other than district heating, and I hear those reasons day after day after day. But, and I promise I'm going to have something more positive to say now, for all that, at this stage in mid-2020, I have never been more optimistic, more positive about the prospects for the future of this business than I am today. Things are moving everywhere. The discussion in Brussels has never been richer. We've never been busier, and I consider that to be great news. District heating is emerging as a key component of what the EU likes to refer to as sector integration. Those of you in Denmark know the story perfectly well, the role that district heating infrastructure can play in pulling the disparate parts of our energy system together. Similarly, we see all kinds of movement at national level and in cities across Europe. Exciting research projects, exciting pilot projects, and more advanced stuff where pipes are really going into the ground and cities are moving on this. I see these points of light everywhere and all kinds of reasons to be excited. The job in the coming decade, it's not for the next 30 years, it's the next 10, is to start to pull these different points of light together so that something larger emerges from it, that we're not only talking about specific developments in one city or one town or one region, but a wider movement spreading across Europe and making sure that District Energy does the job that we all know it can do. And we're lucky to have with us this morning 4 of the guys whose responsibility it is to make sure that all this happens. So we're going to have a nice open discussion this morning. I hope we'll have lots of input from those of you listening or watching online. But we'll start with a short statement from each of our 4 illustrious guests. And we'll go in the following order. We have Anton Koller from Danfoss. We have Volker Kinzeln from Baden-Württemberg from KEA. We have Christensen from Logstor and Steen, Schelle, Jensen with us from Kamstrup, our metering experts. So guys, if we can start with Anton, give us a few minutes on how you see the future. Anton.
It's a great pleasure to be here today, and I'd just like to share my views, so to see how to make really district heating a winner in all over the world in this energy transition. I think if we look at this question, then I think we need to answer or look at 3 things. One is we really need to establish a vision that district energy is the right sustainable solution for the urban areas, and we should not allow that somebody else is taking that space. And I think that space, as also Paul said, is of course congested, and everybody likes to be in that. But I think we need to bring arguments, not only energy efficiency arguments, but also bigger arguments.
Anton, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. I'm getting feedback from a few people that it's hard to hear you. Of course, now we see a lot of your chest, which is great, but you're a bit tall. You might have to scrunch down a bit.
Should I turn off video? That sound?
It's very quiet.
Okay. So let's see.
Anton,
Better now?
whoa,
Sound-wise?
get really close to your iPad and then talk straight into it, Anton. Then we can see your picture afterwards.
Can you hear me?
Go on speaking.
Huh?
It's a struggle.
Partly.
Difficult?
Difficult.
Let's.
Try saying something again, Anton. And stand close to your iPad. And speak up.
Hear me? No sound. Doesn't work.
Paul, maybe the next speaker, and then Anton. I'll do some notes to you, and we can try to fixing your issue. Okay? Paul, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. So we'll work on the technical stuff with Anton. Volker, would you be able to jump in?
Okay, I try to. Well, it's like you pointed out. I think that the future looks pretty bright ahead. We are convinced that there's a very promising future for district heating. But the question is, how do we get the municipalities, the cities, to find out where to start? And that's the reason why the state of Baden-Württemberg introduces in the new climate protection law the requirement for the biggest 100 cities to do an urban planning, or more precisely, urban heat planning. That means they have to find out how to defossilize their energy supply within the next 30 years. So all of them have to draw up a picture that shows a fossil-free heat supply of the whole city, including the municipal buildings, the residential buildings, the industrial buildings, the office buildings. How do we supply the heat for these buildings without fossil energies by 2050? And we are pretty sure that this won't be able without using district heating, because there's so much sources of energy that you can only use if you have a heating network in your streets. And this is, we see it as a kind of backbone, as an infrastructure, like sewage or water supply. We are not in the times anymore where everybody has a well in his backyard. So we rely on public water supply. And why do we all have to embrace our boilers in the basement? With this infrastructure, district heating, we can use both renewable energies, all sorts of, and which is very important in our highly industrialized area, Baden-Württemberg, we can use excess heat from industry. And the only way to use excess heat from industry is via a district heating system, and of course with a district heating system with a rather low temperature level. We don't run these systems with 100 degrees anymore, but we try to be as low as possible to be able to use as much energy as possible. So I'm completely with you with the idea district heating has a very bright future ahead, but we have to convince all the people in the municipalities that this is the way towards a sustainable future, and that's what we are doing with our competence center. The change of energy, change of the heating systems, we call it Wärmewende, and these folks will be out in the cities and try to explain to the mayors, to the city councillors, what are the benefits of district heating, and try to explain them that the alternatives that you, Paul, mentioned in the beginning, electricity, green electricity and green gas, are part of the picture, but can't be the sole solution. We need green electricity, of course we need it, of course we need green gas, but not for a single boiler, but for a cogeneration unit in a bigger system.
Super.
So far for the beginning.
Thank you very much, Volker. That's great. All of it. Thank you very much, Volker. I don't know if we have Anton back online. If we can try again, Anton. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me now, or is it better now?
Not.
It's marginally better.
Should we continue, or what should we do?
Yeah, I would get yourself as close as you can to the mic. Maybe we end up putting your picture instead of the video in the square, Morten, if you can, and then we should be able to hear Anton.
Headset, so a microphone wise, it should be good then.
Yeah.
Good. Then I try to restart again. So I think the question how to make district energy a winner of all over the world, I think and this is the main question, this energy transition. And I think we need to look at three important topics from my point of view. One is that we really need to share a vision for modern district energy. So district energy is really be seen as the preferred solution for the city level. And this is a question which is not only driven by pure energy efficiency, but also for the bigger picture, as have been mentioned by Paul and Volker before. How is district energy fitting in the bigger energy system? And I think here the sector coupling plays a big role, and district energy has a lot to offer to make that happen, particularly with the surplus electricity. So I think this is a great thing what we have, and we need to foster that in the political heads. And also digitalization is coming, and of course this brings a lot of new opportunities for us and also for the sector. And I think this is also driving for sure end-to-end optimization of the network, and this will drive that district energy will be even more competitive than today. And we should not forget at the end of the day, we need to come with hard facts and compete with other systems, and also making sure that district energy is the most competitive system
for urban areas. And I think the other part here is also that you can say we have done a lot of good work in the past, particularly my colleagues around here and you, Paul, that district energy for sure is on the agenda on the political level, particularly in Europe. But we should not forget the real decision for district energy will be made locally on a city level. So I think it's important that city level politicians understand this vision, a simple vision, why district energy is the best and preferred solution in urban areas. Second, we need to create the right framework, because when we look now into our ambition and saying we have made a study together with the University of Aalborg to decarbonize district energy until 2050, and if we do so in getting a share of 50% of the heating market in Europe, that would mean that we need to build until 2050 around 21,000 new networks. So it's a huge number. And as Paul said, the change of really being on the right track will be made in the next 5 to 10 years. So in that time, the majority of these will be built, and we estimate that around 16,000 new networks needs to be built in that time frame. And this will only happen if there's an attractive framework for investors. Otherwise, all the money will not flow in this direction. So a strong network, I think legal framework is very important. And third, I think we need to take advantage of the green bounce back. I think it is really and one in a lifetime opportunity. I think many of my colleagues in the panel, we are talking about district energies for many years and had good argument always on our side to get that moving. But I think it's a one in a lifetime historical moment, because now a lot of money is coming in with this investments to restart the economy, and that will be connected with the green bounce back. But the political argument we have now on our side is that district energy is creating over average local jobs. And we have seen studies from COBE and also on the European level that district energy will create a lot of local jobs. And I think on the political mind, of course, at the moment, you can see the high unemployment rate is for sure what the people and politicians are concerned. So the money, how that will be spent on the green bounce back, this job creation, I think, is a very strong argument beside all the energy arguments we have. Yeah? So I think in summary from my side, we need to have a clear, simple vision which is understood by political decision makers. We need to have a strong framework so investors are really keen to go into district heating. And I think we need to have also taking short-term advantage now of all the billions what are flowing into the economy, that they're also really coming to district energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anton. Thanks a lot. I heard all of that anyway. I hope everybody else did as well. Good. Kim, we're always talking at my place about how I don't want to hear about potential anymore. I want pipes in the ground. That's your job. Kim, I think you're muted.
Better now?
Much.
Yeah. Thank you, actually, Paul, for your question and for your cool introduction here. In the beginning, I thought I had registered for the wrong seminar, but well, anyway, we got it right also by the presentation from Volker and Anton later. I have actually brought with me a few slides here just to frame the discussion and try to answer those questions of yours there, Paul. So if you don't mind, let's go through a few parts here just really to frame things. I'm always happy to be part of discussing how we can accelerate the penetration of district heating. It's not only a matter of pipes in the ground, it's a matter of building complete decarbonized systems and to continue what we are doing so far, especially in Europe these days. And I realize that with the audience here, we may be singing a bit to the choir, we may be repeating the same statements and messages, but nevertheless, we need to orchestrate things, we need to work together in order to make things happen. It's really not rocket science out there, it's just a matter of making things happen, really. So I don't know if I can switch here. Yeah, I think I can here. So no need to tell you who we are, I think you all know that. The conventional way of working with district heating has been, like the common way of working has been very heavy dependent on fossil fuel in the past decades. The classical way, the conventional way, has been combined heat and power, gas boilers, etc., which has been a good way from a financial standpoint. However, it's been a very poor way from a CO2 emission standpoint. So we need to break the habits. We need to work with other ways of providing heat to homes throughout Europe and beyond Europe, for that sake. Today, about half of the energy source is actually based on fossil fuel today. We see, though, that many countries have taken a front-runner approach to this and have started to change over, and has been building, along with the politicians, very ambitious plans. Some have gotten a long way already, others are still lagging behind there. We also know that the way systems are built today are not done in the most professional, in the most efficient way. Even though we do convert from black energy to green energy, a lot of the energy still goes to waste. Goes to waste in the buildings. It also goes to waste in the transmission and distribution lines. About 20 to 25% of all generated heat never reaches the consumer, and in fact the consumer still pays for it. So that's another thing that we need to tackle in the future. And what is that future all about? It's a matter of connecting all the free heat available. It's a matter of phasing out the black heat, the fossil fuel-based heat, CO2 emission heat, and it's a matter of introducing all what we have available out there, connecting things, not only connecting waste plants, biofuel, geothermal, whatever, power to heat. There's ample opportunities for this, but it's also a matter of connecting grids outside of the larger cities, so that suburbs, smaller cities around are interconnected, and we can make much more efficient use of the energy produced or sourced. And it's also a matter of bringing more quality into, of course, the pipeline systems here, so that we avoid that tremendous heat loss. If you imagine what level and what amount of heat is generated every day in Europe, and you look at that 20 to 25% of that goes to waste, it's a humongous amount of energy that is just produced for no reason. And there are ways, by digitalizing networks, by picking up data, by running much higher performance levels of the systems, that can tackle these challenges here, and also by putting pipes of better quality with insulation properties of premium levels in the ground. There are many ways of handling this. But one thing is that we have the ideas how to do it. The other thing is to get it done. And it's so obvious what we will get out of it, that we can actually, with the means and tools that we have available today, we can actually decarbonize the energy systems. It's not a long shot, and it's ready available technology that we use at the most. We can make it much more environmental friendly. We can make it socio-economical much better, so societies will benefit from the green transformation here, and also consumers will largely benefit from this one. There is already today no doubt that district heating is the most consumer-friendly from a financial perspective and from a maintenance perspective source of energy for owners of houses there, but we can make it even more attractive from a financial standpoint. So all things, regulation from Brussels or not, everything speaks in the favor of district heating, but we need to make it more sexy. We need to dust it off from the old communism way of looking at district heating. This is really a fantastic way of working, and we need to get that story told so that we are not up against all the other statements about electrification, about gas and green gas and all of that. We need to find the ways of getting there. We know pretty much what it's all about, and we need to get things done. But there are many stakeholders in play here. There are other politicians, and I think we all know what needs to be done here. We need brave politicians. We need to be able to ban fossil fuel. We need to tax heavy fossil fuel. We need to put subsidies when needed in order to get the green energy into the systems here. They have a role, the politicians, at all levels, at an EU level, at a national level, at a municipal level, everywhere. But probably the most important part is the utilities, that they are brave enough to transform things here, and that we as suppliers are good enough to provide our quality products and solutions into the systems here. It is not rocket science, but it's also not something that is just a quick fix here. It takes time and it takes heavy investments. So we need to overcome all of that if we orchestrate this approach here and if we work together. So yes, Paul, pipes in the ground, that's one part of it, but it's only one part of it.
Super. Thank you, Kim. Thanks very much. Steen.
Yes, thank you.
You guys are in charge of keeping track of all this stuff.
Yeah,
so,
thank you. Actually, I would like to start telling a very short story. A couple of years back, during the summer, I went together with my 2 young daughters to the local sewage plant. They had a day open for the visitors, for public visitors. And I thought I'd better teach them a little bit engineering and how things work in real life. They accepted, maybe because they offered free hot dogs and soft drinks, but anyway, we had a very interesting visit to this sewage plant, and I was actually quite surprised myself. This plant collects sewage water from 30,000 households in a semi-urban area, and they pump all this sewage water into a central sewage plant. And I was actually quite surprised by the fact that they had an energy efficiency level close to 140%. So they were actually producing more energy from the sewage water than the energy it took to pump the sewage water from the 30,000 households to the central plant and do the necessary treatment. And how come? After they have cleaned the water, and we saw that during the visits, they would end up with this sewage sludge, and then they put this sewage sludge into biogas tanks, where biogas is then produced by the anaerobic digestion of this sludge. Then they put the biogas into a CHP plant and produce electricity, and they take the waste heat from the electricity production and put into the local district heating system. So all in all, it resulted in an energy efficiency result of close to 140%. And my main point here that this was only possible because there was a district heating system in place right next to the sewage plant. So what I want to tell here is that with this story is that we can only become smart, and we can only do smart energy systems when we connect across sectors. And as we heard from the other speakers as well, district heating is strongly needed to take use of the big amounts of waste heat available. Remember from the Roadmap Europe studies that we have more waste heat available in Europe than heat demand, and 50% of this is feasible to put into district heating. So I fully agree with you, Paul, that it's very happy to see all the tailwind district heating is getting from Brussels, and I think district heating is really moving to the center stage, with starting with the heat cooling strategy in 2016, and now with the sector integration and the recovery plan and the Green Deal, etc. But I also agree with you, Paul, that it's not an inevitable truth. District heating growth is not something that will happen by itself. It's something that we will have to work hard for to see happen. And of course, fourth generation district heating is a necessity to make that happen, and we need to work with systems with lower temperatures, much more complex systems where we need a high degree of digitalization to make it happen. So there's a lot of technical challenges, but I also think we certainly have a lot of challenges towards convincing the end users that they will have to choose district heating in this battle. I think if we look at the policy in Brussels, very much around district heating and energy efficiency is centered around empowering the consumer. So we need to solve, of course, the technical challenges of making the green transition happen, but we certainly also need to discuss how we can engage with citizens, with cities, and with the consumers to actually make it happen. And we should never forget this this part of the district heating future, because without anyone wanting to connect to the district heating, we can be as good as we want to produce green fourth generation district heating. So yeah, that's what I would very much like to discuss. How can we both solve the technical challenges, and how can we make it a very attractive offering with new business models, etc. Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much, Steen. That's great. Now, I think there will be the opportunity for people to ask questions in the chat, but if you guys don't mind, I'd like to start with one of my own. It's my little privilege as the moderator. It's concerning Baden-Württemberg, Volker. I've actually been in touch in the last few months with a colleague of yours called Max Peters, a brilliant guy working on heat network development in Baden-Württemberg. And one of the things that I've been wondering, I've heard a lot about this heat planning initiative whereby the 100 largest cities need to go through this process of exploring what can be done to decarbonize heat. What I'm wondering about is, from your point of view, will these cities and towns go through this exercise genuinely and sincerely, or is there a risk that it sort of ends up a box-ticking exercise where they conclude that actually things should stay the way they are?
Well, of course, there's a risk that this ends up in the shelf, and that's why we try to support the municipalities with guidelines to avoid this problem. The state of Baden-Württemberg hasn't decided to force the municipalities to implement the plans. This was a political discussion that ended up with the requirement to set up the plan, but not with a requirement to implement the plan. But our hope is that with the guidelines that we develop, we start a local discussion about the future heat supply, and this local discussion hopefully leads to a pressure from the citizens that say, well, folks, you set up a very interesting plan. How are we going to implement this plan? You showed us how to defossilize the energy supply, the heat supply of our city, and how do we implement it? So first, we hope from the pressure from the ground, and secondly, with our guidelines, we try to show up and to show the steps how this implementation could be possibly work. Paul, you should unmute your mic.
Yeah, unmute myself. Thank you. Thanks, Volker. One of the questions that's coming up on the chat is about fourth generation low temperature district heating. Obviously, it's very appealing for lots of reasons, but it does imply certain conversions or adaptations of the HVAC system on the building side. I don't know if which of you would be most keen to jump in, but
I can tap in shortly here, Paul. I think what is quite unique about district heating compared to other utilities is that everything is interconnected, and what happens in the buildings very much affects the efficiency of the overall system, much more than for electricity and water supply. We had some cooperation with HOFOR, the utility of Copenhagen, where we did some work together with Danfoss and Grundfos before the C40 summit in Copenhagen last October, because of the fact that their impression was that 50 to 60% of all the HVAC system was running inefficiently or somehow misadjusted, which would then again would lead to too high return temperatures, too high heat loss, and loss of efficiency on the production side. And in that case, we actually did a prototype where we were able to do data-driven troubleshooting of the heat installations, and actually detected that I think it was close to 70% of the examined systems that needed some kind of adjustment, but it was also adjustment that could be made on a relatively small scale and without too large investment. But the utilities really need to monitor the buildings, because what they also saw in Copenhagen was that even modern buildings with all the new intelligent equipment was not running correctly, because too intelligent products was fighting against each other. So I think this is one of the areas where a high degree of digitalization is needed.
Maybe, Paul, if you I can add to that. I think clearly there are areas where this is of concern and where design changes needs to be made. And there, of course, you should carefully evaluate whether it makes sense or not. But there are technologies today where you can actually run low temperature heating systems, district heating systems, and then boost with the use of heat pumps closer to the consumer. So you get the advantages of the low temperature systems in the mains, but you actually use that technology of boosting not only for the purpose of domestic hot water, but also for space heating out there. So the problem is not extremely big, but it is there, and we should recognize it.
Well, our experience is just one.
Can we talk?
Our experience is that very often the radiators for space heating are oversized. So if you do a decent adjustment of the hydraulic system, and you have on a secondary level a high efficiency pump, the temperature level that you really need is much lower than the temperature level that the system was designed for originally. And if you do that building by building, you end up with much lower temperatures that you have in the system today. So our experience is that the systems that are running today run at a too high temperature compared to the needs of the buildings. Of course, you have to have the solution for hot water supply, but if you are already at a temperature level of 70 degrees in your supply system, you're in average much lower than the systems running today. One addition to the example from Steen, I would like to invite him to a sewage plant here in Baden-Württemberg, which extends the system that he visited with his two daughters. So this system, in addition to the biogas and cogeneration, has a solar thermal system that feeds into the district heating system, a PV system to generate electricity in the summer. There's a storage tank which can be installed at the sewage plant much more easily than somewhere downtown. And they have a biomass boiler for times where the heat supply from the sewage plant is not sufficient, so they install the biomass boiler that feeds in heat from local biomass to this district heating system. Plus, there's a heat pump, and the heat pump uses heat from the water that runs out of the sewage plants to the creek, and uses this as a heat source for the heat pump, and supplies as well heat to the district heating system. So you see that the picture can grow even bigger compared to the system that you described as, Steen.
We'll be happy to join you, Volker, once we are allowed to travel again. I just want to mention one point about buildings and HVAC systems and lower temperatures. I think that's also a very simple point sometimes when discussing with utilities and suggesting that they start to lower temperatures. Sometimes you will get the answer, yes, but in our contracts we have stated that we have to deliver 100 degrees. So we cannot just start lowering the temperatures. So simple things as that needs to be addressed. And I mean, you can sometimes think, yes, we can just, it will be no problem with the new buildings, etc. But we have to remember that I think 80% of the buildings that will need supply in 2050 is already built. So we need to deal a lot with existing buildings, existing systems, and address how we can step by step work with getting these buildings in a shape where they can participate in a.
But I think on this aspect to be added here is also that the digitalization will be a quantum leap here, because with digitalization systems we understand the behavior of the buildings much better, and we understand which buildings really need a change to cope with the low temperature and which do not. And I believe also that particularly booster heat pumps in the network will also make a lot of the old buildings integratable to lower district heating networks. So I think District Energy will see here with digitalization, I think, a quantum leap to make, so to say, different temperature level to be connectable. Yeah.
I think the problem is that we oversupply in the energy networks today, in the district heating networks today, just to make sure that the last consumer on the very last line gets what he pays for. And there's so much waste in this one. The amount of energy that we circulate in the district heating pipelines today, if we can reduce that to what is needed only, and if we can reduce the flow temperature, so work with the low temperature heating schemes, and if we can put, and sorry for that, but put better pipes in the ground, I mean reduce the heat loss. There are tremendous ways of reducing the heat loss. By using premium pipe systems, you can easily reduce that heat loss to half of what it is today. The average age of pipes in European district heating networks is above 30 years old, and with no diffusion barriers, with no high insulation properties. So there are many ways of doing it, but it's not a quick fix, and it requires quite heavy investments. But if you have like a total cost of ownership approach to this one here, you will have this paid back within 6-7 years, which is for infrastructural investments, quality investment.
So to add on that, Kim, then we have an example from a mid-size Danish district heating company in Fynen, in Assens. The city is called, maybe some of you have been there. The CEO there, he took over a fairly efficient district heating system, and he was told that there was not much to do more. Then they did a full rollout of smart meters, hourly values, to get information from the grid. They started to use different digital tools to close down bypasses, etc. And they actually managed over a 1-2 year period to lower the forward temperatures 6 to 8 degrees. And they removed 12% of the heat lost year one. And the second year they reduced it further 2.5%. Now we're trying to calculate how good can it actually be. But this was in a already efficient system. So fully agree with you, Kim, that there is so much to do in removing the heat loss in the distribution system. And it's I saw from the Danish statistics, it says that the heat loss in distribution is 11 to 12% of the total cost of running a utility. So it's fairly big money.
In terms of cost, yes. In terms of energy wasted, it's 18%.
I think the other aspect on this of understanding the secondary side better, it's so to say not only so to say the efficiency of what you consume right now. I think what we also learn with the digital systems that of course you can then much better managing the peak loads. Yeah, I think what we have seen different systems that you can then with the digital software layer on top, you can influence the peak and use, so to say, the building as storage. And I think this is, of course, for the utility, I would say the biggest savings, because you come much more to a flat production line and not anymore to these peaks. And of course, the peak heating load is the most expensive one. And I personally believe that the marginal cost of heating on a modern district heating network will get to zero. Because you should be able to get, so to say, heat out of surplus electricity or waste heat, and should be able to store it and then really use it when you need it. And I think this is from my vision, I would say operationally, the big vision for District Energy, that you're really driving such advanced system to come to marginal cost per kilowatt hour.
I have a question related to that. 3 years ago, we were in the middle of negotiations in Brussels on the Renewable Energy Directive. And one of the goals that we had at the time was to establish in Brussels and in European law the concept of waste heat. And to make the argument that waste heat from an industrial process or a data center or whatever is every bit as desirable and virtuous, if not more so, than conventional renewable heat, because it's energy that we have anyway and so on, and it makes sense to use it. That's an argument that we won at the time, and now I have seen in the last year in particular that the new commission and the new commissioner for energy is particularly keen on the concept. And I'm worried that we're going to end up a victim of our own success, because suddenly I can see that we're a little bit the shiny new toy, and politicians want to do something, and they want something to be done, and they want something to happen, and it should happen quickly. All of which is great in principle. In practice, we see that there are definitely challenges in getting uptake of waste heat up, contractual issues, business models, and so on. And now, and someone's just made the comment in the chat, obviously with all the fuss around hydrogen at the moment, we can expect that those types of processes also generate a great deal of waste heat. My worry is that with the fashion for hydrogen islands and so on in the North Sea, all that stuff's going to be an awful long way away from the residential heat market.
To start maybe here from my side, I would say that the most important is that we have simply legal frameworks. I think we use and we have implemented a lot of waste heat utilization and like say in the supermarkets, but very often then I think when you take 100% of the supermarkets we have installed something to utilize waste heat, then I would say 70% then were scared by the utilities off and used it only for internal use and preferred that option, and only 30% went the lengthy ways to find agreements. And I think this is one of the key things what I also wanted to address with the legal frameworks. I think the waste heat to be connected to the grid needs to be as simple as when you install a solar panel on your roof. And if we're not it needs to be that clear for the industry who are having waste heat that this is very straightforward. Otherwise, I think it will be very difficult for our sector to succeed.
I think even in a...
Can I add to that?
Even in a district heating country like Denmark, we are struggling with the waste heat, and there's been heavy discussions on the taxation of waste heat, and they were afraid about, let's say, false waste heat that would lead to less energy efficiency efforts if you could just put the waste heat into district heating. So somehow waste heat and district heating or energy efficiency needs to go hand in hand. You still need to have energy efficiency measures as well. It seems to be solved now in Denmark with removing the taxation, more or less, hopefully. And then agree with you, Anton, then we need to go to lower temperatures to make as much waste heat available as possible, and to make the integration as simple as possible.
I would add to that, legislation or not, taxation or not, we need things to be done, and there are great examples of utilities now transforming their whole energy system. And Volker, you may be aware of, like Hamburg as an example, now trying to decarbonize the full city of Hamburg, going from 65% carbon to zero in about 10 years. It's a massive investment that they do right now. It's a massive transformation. And phasing out coal-fired heat and power plants and replacing them with industrial waste heat. So it's really a brilliant example of how they also at the same time bring the penetration, the use of district heating from a current level of 20% up to 35% in one city in a decade, in 10 years' time. We need much more examples like Hamburg. They're brave to do it. They have the guts, they have the financial, they have the funding in place, they have the vision, the ambition, and all of that. That is what we need.
Paul, you raised the question, do we need district heating if we have hydrogen? Of course we need district heating. Hydrogen is a very interesting energy carrier. We need hydrogen for example, in the transport sector. We need hydrogen in the chemical industry. We need hydrogen in the steel industry. Maybe we can use some hydrogen in fuel cells in our district heating systems for our peak load. A fuel cell is nothing else than a cogeneration unit, an electrochemical cogeneration unit, but not running 6,000 hours per year, but maybe running 2,000 hours. And we have to be aware, hydrogen is not growing on trees. So for producing hydrogen, we need a lot of renewable electricity. And first of all, at the moment, we're still running for supplying all our electricity needs in Europe with renewable electricity. And in addition, we try to have enough electricity for producing all the hydrogen that we need for the chemical industry, plus the transport sector, plus all our heating sector. No, folks, it won't be possible to set up so many windmills and PV systems. We won't get the acceptance for that in Europe. So we have to be more efficient, and district heating is a way to be more efficient, to use energy that we already have available, excess heat that we already have available. So we can't avoid being efficient, and district heating helps us being more efficient. Yes, Morten, you're right. The production of hydrogen
Thank you, Volker. Anyone else on that?
Exothermal process, so we can use this energy as well, as long as the electrolyzer is not offshore.
Yeah, good. Can we talk about money for a few minutes? We have 7 minutes left. Anton, you mentioned it, and I think it's come up elsewhere. Obviously, a big job here is to make sure that the conditions are right to attract investment into the sector. There's going to be a lot of money needed. Is the climate already favorable to attract? I hear all the time about this pension money that likes long, stable, predictable returns. In principle, we should be a perfect fit, but I'm not sure it's as simple as that.
In principle, this is a sector that would both require but also be awarded a lot of funding because it's attractive. But the problem is that this is a very political area. It's regulated and it's unpredictable in that sense, even though that there are many very positive trends, and we all know that we are up to this green transformation and we can get a lot out of it. There's a lot of uncertainty, so pension money, private operators at a larger scale will have their question marks to invest in this sector right now. So we need a lot of public funding still, and in a good combination, in fact. So as long as there is uncertainty on the long-term future, ownership, etc., I think it's doubtful that we will see a lot of.
Then I think, Paul, what you have done from your Heat and Power in terms of the renovation wave discussions is very good, where it's stated that it's not only the building, but it's also the heat supply, and you need to consider that in a broader aspect. And I think things like that, pension money would probably move easier into building renovation than to build out district heating. But if district heating can be promoted through the renovation wave of buildings, that would probably be one of the ways to move towards funding.
We are very much of the view that there cannot be a renovation wave that doesn't include heat networks. There is no distinction. They're part of the same thing. Okay, guys, we have 4 or 5 minutes left. Could I ask each of you to give us 30 seconds or so of final thoughts on what we can expect in these 10 years to come? Because now it's been said a few times, I really think this is the decisive decade. I don't want us to still be worrying about whether or not district heating is going to take off in 2037. Later, at some point, I'd like to retire. So can we, I think maybe Anton's still having some technical problems. He'll join us if he can.
What's the way
Volker, can we
next
start
10 years? I'm convinced that we need the cities, the municipalities as partners, and we have to convince the cities that they benefit from local district heating systems, and I think we should focus on the cities as our partners, and the cities own the utilities, at least in our area and in Germany in general. So the utilities should be our partners like the cities are, and together with them I think we can introduce many more district heating systems.
Yeah, I hope so. You can hear me? Good. I think the important is for me that we all together be a little bit more brave ourselves, meaning our sector, utilities, suppliers, we all need to step up to make sure that we really show the innovation what we are talking about. Because if we don't do it ourselves, we will not be incredible that people say, yeah, that's really the thing we like to do. So I think it's important that we are in the core of our sector really showing this innovation from integrating waste heat and making digitalization happening. I think this is a core thing. Please to attract more investments, to do really all the new networks. So I think this is what I believe in the next couple of years are really, really important, that we show this, that this is happening. Yeah.
Today we have like 50% of energy sources based on fossil. I think in 10 years from now we'll have maybe 70-80% based on fossil fuel. I think this, what we've started, will accelerate further. And I think the reason for that is that money is not the right currency to measure in right now. This may help the transformation, etc. But there's a climate currency, whether it's CO2 or whatever we use here. There will be much more awareness of the climate. I mean, money is just a human creation. It's economy, and well, we all care about economy, but we should care much more about the climate. And so I think everybody will have to realize that this is the right currency, and we'll have to transform these kind of things through taxation of the wrong behavior and subsidies on the right behavior. Lots of things will happen, and things will just further accelerate. Paul, you're muted.
Yes, I think we didn't get to discuss it much here, but we should never forget the consumers and how to make district heating to an attractive product. I think we see in Denmark examples where we're discussing conversion from natural gas to district heating, where utilities have great success with leasing out the heat interface units for only a few hundred euros per month. Customers will need no big upfront payments, so district heating is very attractive, and the utility have all the necessary tools to monitor and adjust that everything is working as it should. So this is an example where district heating is made simple, easy, attractive, and comfortable for the end users. So yeah, hopefully we can drive that also through new business models.
Okay, thank you, Steen. Thank you, everybody. Look, if I was more optimistic than ever before at 11:05 this morning, I'm now even more optimistic at noon. Thanks a lot, guys, for your energy and your ideas and for your time. Thanks also to everybody who was able to log on and listen and participate. I'm glad you were here with us.
Bye-bye.
And I wish.
Have a great day.